At the party, she spots her ex and introduces her millionaire boss as her boyfriend, until one kiss. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Amy Parker was the kind of person who always made sure her life appeared flawless on the outside. Bright, independent, and a rising star in her company. She seemed to have it all. But there was a part of her, hidden deep beneath her composed exterior, that still held on to the past. And tonight, at a lavish party thrown by her company, that past was about to collide with her present. She had come to the event with Maxwell Anderson, her millionaire boss, someone she admired and respected, but he was also the person she'd been forced to spend more and more time with lately, and she couldn't help but feel some confusion about their relationship. They stood together by the bar, their drinks in hand, mingling with the other guests. The air was filled with laughter and chatter, but Amy's mind was elsewhere. She had hoped tonight would be a simple business event, but fate had other plans. Just as she was about to turn and ask Maxwell about the schedule for the evening, she caught sight of him, Ethan Williams, her ex-boyfriend, the man who had once meant everything to her. She hadn't seen him in months, but the sight of him hit her like a wave. For a moment, she froze, her heart racing. He hadn't noticed her yet, but that wouldn't last. Ethan was across the room, talking to a group of people, his laugh unmistakable. Amy's pulse quickened as old memories came flooding back, good ones, bad ones, all tangled together. Her mind was a whirlwind, but she couldn't just stand there. She had to do something. She turned to Maxwell, who was busy chatting with a colleague, and took a deep breath. She had made a decision. She would introduce him as her boyfriend. Maxwell, with his sharp suit and confident smile, would make the perfect present-day version of Amy's life. She needed to show Ethan that she had moved on, that she was successful, that she was happy. Maxwell raised an eyebrow when Amy turned to him, a playful glint in her eyes. "Max," she said, her voice steady. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." Maxwell followed her gaze and saw Ethan standing across the room. Amy could feel her heart pounding as she walked towards him, Maxwell at her side. She could already feel the tension building. As they approached, Ethan finally turned his head. Their eyes met, and for just a split second, Amy thought she saw a flicker of surprise, then recognition. "Amy," Ethan said, his voice warm but guarded. "Long time no see." Amy smiled, keeping her composure, and gestured to Maxwell beside her. "Ethan, this is Maxwell Anderson," she said, her voice just a little too bright. "My boyfriend." Ethan's expression shifted, just slightly. He didn't say anything right away, his gaze moving from Amy to Maxwell. Maxwell, ever the professional, extended his hand with a smile. "Nice to meet you," he said, his tone polite but firm. Amy could feel the tension in the air, the awkwardness between the three of them palpable. But she held her ground, keeping her smile intact. She had done what she needed to do. Now, all she had to do was enjoy the night. Little did she know, however, that tonight would not be as simple as she'd imagined. The world she had so carefully constructed was about to unravel in a way she couldn't have predicted. As Amy and Maxwell stood there, the awkward tension was thick in the air. Ethan's gaze lingered on them for a moment longer than she had expected. It was subtle, but Amy could feel it. A quiet analysis in Ethan's eyes as he scanned Maxwell. Her heart raced as she waited for him to speak, to react. Finally, Ethan broke the silence, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. "So, this is Maxwell, huh?" he said, his tone casual, but Amy caught the underlying edge in his voice. "I didn't expect you to be, well, here with someone like him." She forced a smile, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can't say I expected this either," she replied, glancing at Maxwell, who, to his credit, stayed calm and composed. "But here we are." Maxwell gave Ethan a tight smile, clearly sensing the tension as well. "Yes, well, life can surprise you," he said, his voice smooth. "I'm just here to enjoy the evening, like everyone else." The conversation drifted awkwardly as Amy desperately searched for a way to steer it in a more comfortable direction. Ethan's presence, once a source of comfort, now felt like an unbearable weight. Her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed the subtle shift in Maxwell's posture, his easy confidence beginning to fade just slightly. She hadn't expected that. Maxwell, the powerful and commanding boss she'd known, was now just another man standing in front of her ex. Ethan, on the other hand, was still very much the same. Charming, a little too smug for his own good, and still carrying that air of self-assuredness that had once drawn her in. "You've been doing well, I take it?" Ethan asked, looking at her with a slight smirk. Amy didn't know how to respond. Was he genuinely interested, or was he just trying to poke at her, see if he could rattle her? She cleared her throat and nodded. "I'm doing great, actually. Work's been great, too," she said, throwing a glance at Maxwell for emphasis. He gave her a nod of encouragement, though she could see the slight strain in his eyes. Maxwell had never been one for small talk. "And how about you, Ethan?" she asked, trying to shift the focus off herself. "Still living the same life? Still the man everyone's trying to be?" Ethan chuckled softly, clearly pleased with the question. "Some things don't change," he said. "But I guess that's true for both of us." There was a pause as they all stood there, exchanging forced pleasantries. Amy tried to focus on the conversation, but her mind kept drifting back to what had just happened between her and Ethan. That flicker of something, that undeniable spark that, despite everything, still lingered between them. She had told herself she was over him, that the years they had spent together, the breakup, the hurt, it was all in the past. But standing here with Ethan again, the old feelings came rushing back, uninvited. Her heart skipped a beat as she stole a glance at Maxwell, who was now looking at her with a raised brow. Was he noticing the tension between her and Ethan? Was he picking up on it, too? Or was he too busy playing the role of the perfect, unattainable businessman to care? Amy's thoughts were interrupted when Ethan spoke again, his voice low. "It's good to see you, Amy," he said, his tone suddenly more sincere, almost nostalgic. "You've changed. You look different." She met his eyes, feeling a jolt of recognition. It was the same old Ethan, the one who had always been able to make her feel both special and frustrated at the same time. But this time, something had shifted. He wasn't the same person she had fallen for. She wasn't the same person either. "I guess we both have," she said quietly, her voice softer than she had intended. The conversation lingered in the air, thick with things unsaid. Amy knew the night was far from over, and whatever was about to happen next, she was ready for it. She had no choice but to face the ghosts of her past and the reality of her present, all while trying to figure out what she really wanted from the future. Ivy, a stunning redhead, stood across the room, noticing the tension between Amy and Ethan. She had watched from a distance, observing the subtle shift in dynamics. It wasn't unusual for Amy to be in the spotlight, but tonight, there was something different, something that even the confident Maxwell could not hide. The night continued, but the energy in the air felt thick with unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and a lot of confusion. Ivy had been Amy's friend for years. She knew when something was off. She quietly made her way over to Amy, noticing how Amy's eyes lingered on Ethan for a second too long. As Ivy approached, Amy gave her a tight smile, trying to act as though nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey, you okay?" Ivy asked softly, her voice carrying just enough concern to get Amy's attention. Amy's forced smile faltered for a moment before she nodded. "Yeah, just old memories." She took a deep breath and looked back at Ethan, who had moved toward a group of guests, his back turned to her. Ivy followed Amy's gaze, then looked back at her with a knowing expression. "Old memories have a funny way of sticking around," Ivy said, her tone gentle but insightful. "I saw the way he looked at you, like he's still holding on to something." Amy's heart skipped a beat. Was that true? Had Ethan really not moved on, or was it just her imagination running wild? She turned back to Ivy, her mind racing. "I don't know. I thought I was over him, but—" Her voice trailed off, and she found herself unable to finish the thought. Ivy raised an eyebrow. But you still feel something, don't you?" Amy hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Maybe, but it's not like it matters. I'm with Maxwell now. I've moved on, right?" She looked over at Maxwell, who was talking with another guest, looking every bit the confident businessman she knew him to be. Ivy glanced over at Maxwell too, before turning back to Amy. "He's a great guy, Amy. He's not Ethan, though, and you can't just forget what you felt for him. Not that easily." Amy's thoughts spiraled. She didn't want to admit it, but Ivy was right. No matter how hard she tried to convince herself, something about Ethan still lingered. The feeling she thought she had buried deep inside came rushing back when she least expected it. And now, here she was, standing next to Maxwell, with Ethan lingering at the edge of her thoughts. Could she really let go of the past? Could she really choose Maxwell without wondering if she was making a mistake? Just as Amy was about to speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She took it out, briefly glancing at the screen. A text from Maxwell popped up. "Everything okay? You seem a little distant." Amy's heart sank. She hadn't realized how much of her focus had drifted away from him. She quickly typed a reply. "I'm fine. Just thinking. I'll be with you in a minute." She hit send and slipped the phone back into her pocket. She forced a smile for Ivy, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for the talk, Ivy. I just need a little time to figure things out." Ivy nodded, her eyes full of understanding. "Take your time, Amy. But don't let the past define your future." Amy watched as Ivy walked away, her words echoing in her mind. She took a deep breath and looked around the room. There was Ethan, still standing across the room, his eyes briefly meeting hers again before he turned his attention to someone else. Amy's mind was racing. She had to make a decision. Could she really move on, or was she just fooling herself into believing she had? She had to figure it out, and soon. Maxwell would be waiting for her. He deserved the truth, just as much as she did. As she made her way back to him, her thoughts swirled. The future she thought she had planned now felt uncertain, and she couldn't ignore the pull of the past that threatened to drag her back in. Tonight was far from over, and she had no idea how it would end. Ivy's words still echoed in Amy's mind as she walked back toward Maxwell. The conversation had unsettled her more than she had expected. She had convinced herself that she had moved on, but now the doubts were creeping back in. Was it really over with Ethan? Could she ever fully move on from the man who had been her whole world for so long? She approached Maxwell, who was talking to a small group of guests by the buffet. He was, as always, composed and professional, the kind of man who commanded respect without even trying. But tonight, something in his demeanor seemed off, just slightly. He glanced up as Amy approached, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, a hint of concern in his eyes. Amy nodded, though she wasn't sure herself. "Yeah, just, you know how these events go," she said, trying to sound casual. A little overwhelming. Maxwell studied her for a moment, clearly unconvinced. "If there's something bothering you, you can always talk to me," he said, his tone warm and reassuring. Amy felt a pang of guilt. She knew Maxwell deserved better than this, better than her conflicted feelings. He had been nothing but kind, patient, and attentive. Yet, part of her felt like she was lying to both him and herself. "Thanks," she replied softly, offering him a small smile. "I appreciate it." Maxwell nodded, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something like understanding, mixed with a touch of uncertainty. Amy could tell he wasn't entirely buying her act. The night continued, but the air between them had shifted, even if just slightly. As the evening wore on, Amy couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a crossroads. She had been so sure of herself before, so confident in her decision to move on from Ethan and start fresh with Maxwell. But now, in the midst of this party, surrounded by laughter and idle chatter, she felt more lost than ever. She excused herself from Maxwell's side and made her way to the balcony. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The city lights stretched out before her, a sea of twinkling lights that seemed so distant, so detached from the turmoil in her chest. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Maxwell standing in the doorway, watching her with a quiet, observant gaze. "I thought you might need some space," he said softly, stepping outside to join her. "I know these things can be overwhelming." Amy didn't respond right away. Instead, she leaned against the railing, her hands gripping the cold metal as she gazed out at the night. The silence between them was comfortable, but it only served to amplify the questions swirling in her mind. Was she really over Ethan? Was it possible to have feelings for someone else so soon after everything that had happened? She glanced at Maxwell, who was now standing beside her, his presence solid and steady. He was everything she had told herself she wanted: successful, intelligent, reliable. And yet, her heart still yearned for the person she had left behind. "Amy," Maxwell said, his voice gentle, breaking the silence. If something's bothering you, I need to know. You deserve to be happy. And if I'm not the one to make you happy, then I'll step aside. I won't make this harder for you. His words hit her like a punch to the gut. She hadn't expected him to be so direct, so open with her. But she realized, in that moment, how much he truly cared. The weight of her emotions pressed down on her chest, and she could feel the tears threatening to spill. But she held them back, forcing herself to stay composed. Maxwell, it's not you, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It's me. I'm just not sure of what I want right now. Maxwell nodded, his face softening. I understand, but I need you to be honest with me. I don't want you to feel like you're trapped in something you don't want. Amy felt a lump form in her throat as she looked at him. She had never expected him to say something like that, to give her the space to figure things out. It made her feel even more conflicted. She couldn't keep lying to herself or to him. I don't want to hurt you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But I'm still not sure about everything. Maxwell reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. Take your time, Amy. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time that night, Amy felt a small sense of relief. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held. But for now, she didn't have to make any decisions. She could breathe. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Ivy was already gone when Amy returned to the party. She had gone inside to catch up with some other friends, leaving Amy alone to deal with the storm of emotions brewing inside her. It felt like everyone was in their own little world, blissfully unaware of the chaos inside her mind. Maxwell, too, was mingling again, surrounded by colleagues and clients. He had given her space, and now it felt like she was walking on eggshells. Her thoughts were tangled, and the distance she had created between herself and Maxwell only made her feel more isolated. She knew Maxwell was a good man. In fact, he was everything she thought she wanted in a partner: successful, calm, dependable. But as she scanned the room, her gaze unintentionally landed on Ethan again. He was standing across the room, talking animatedly to someone. But this time, Amy didn't look away immediately. She noticed how his posture hadn't changed. Even now, he still carried that aura of self-assuredness, that easy charm that had once captivated her. Her heart skipped a beat as her mind flooded with memories. Ethan had always been the kind of person who could make her laugh on a whim, someone who knew exactly how to pull her out of a bad mood with just a few words. When they were together, it felt easy, natural. But now, standing here, separated by months of distance and silence, she felt like a stranger to him. Or maybe she was the stranger. The thought made her stomach twist. What had changed between them? Was it her fault for wanting to move on, or was it because Ethan had never really been ready to let go? She didn't know. She didn't know anything. A voice broke her from her thoughts. You all right? Maxwell's voice was calm, but there was a concern behind it. She hadn't even noticed him approach, but now he was standing beside her, his eyes searching her face for any sign of distress. Amy quickly forced a smile. Yeah, just thinking, she said, her voice betraying her. Maxwell seemed to catch the hesitation. About? He asked softly, clearly not buying her attempt at casualness. Amy swallowed hard. She couldn't tell him everything. Not yet. She wasn't sure she even understood everything herself. I'm just trying to figure things out, she replied, her voice softer this time. You know how it is. Maxwell nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. I do, he said quietly, his expression unreadable. But I also know that sometimes figuring things out means you need to talk it through. And if that's something you need, I'm here. The sincerity in his words made Amy feel both comforted and guilty at the same time. She had been keeping so much from him, and yet he was still here, offering her understanding and patience. She wasn't sure she deserved it. I don't want to hurt you, she said suddenly, her voice low. I really don't. Maxwell reached out, gently placing a hand on her arm. His touch was warm, grounding. Amy, you're not going to hurt me by being honest with yourself or with me, he said, his voice soft but firm. But you do need to be honest, even if it's hard. Amy looked into his eyes, feeling a pang in her chest. She wanted to tell him everything, to explain how she felt torn between the past and the future, between what she knew was comfortable and what she was afraid to embrace. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. She turned away slightly, staring out at the bustling party once more. I don't know what I want, Maxwell, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I thought I had it all figured out, but now I feel lost. Maxwell's hand remained on her arm, his grip gentle but unwavering. It's okay to feel lost, Amy. It's okay to not have all the answers right now, he said. His voice a steady presence in the whirlwind of her emotions. But don't keep pretending that you do. That's the part that'll hurt you. Amy didn't know how long they stood there, the two of them silent amidst the noise of the party. She could feel the weight of her indecision, the weight of the future pressing down on her. She couldn't stay in this place forever. One way or another, she would have to decide. Would she stay with what was safe? Or would she take a risk and step into the unknown? The questions swirled in her mind. But for now, all she could do was stand there with Maxwell, letting the quiet between them fill the space that words couldn't reach. Ivy's words were still lingering in Amy's mind as she walked back into the main hall. The air felt thick with the weight of the decisions she knew she had to make. She could still feel Maxwell's touch on her arm, the warmth of his hand that somehow made everything seem clearer, even if just for a moment. But clarity was fleeting. The closer she got to the center of the party, the more she felt the pull of the past, the pull of Ethan. She tried to push the thoughts away, focusing instead on Maxwell, who had rejoined the group near the bar. He was laughing with a few colleagues, his back turned to her. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate his company, but there was something about the way he seemed so comfortable in the world he inhabited that made her feel more unsure than ever. Could she really fit into that world? Could she really be with someone like Maxwell when part of her heart was still in the past? The thoughts tangled in her mind as she stood on the edge of the party, watching Maxwell from a distance. He was speaking with a couple of other people now, his charisma effortlessly drawing them in. Amy couldn't help but admire him. He was everything she had told herself she wanted. Smart, successful, charming. But it didn't change the fact that she couldn't quite shake the feeling that she was holding herself back from fully embracing what he was offering. Her gaze shifted, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw Ethan again. He was standing by the door, talking to a few others, but this time, he wasn't looking at her. Still, there was something about him that made her feel as if he had never really left. It was as though the connection between them, the bond they had shared, had never truly been broken. She was the one who had let go, wasn't she? But now, standing here, she wasn't so sure. The last time she had seen Ethan, it had felt like everything was falling apart. She had ended things, believing it was for the best. And yet, now that she was here, surrounded by the people she was supposed to be building her future with, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't quite define. Was it the fear of the unknown that made her question everything? Or was it simply that she wasn't ready to let go of the life she had once imagined with Ethan? The thought gnawed at her. She took a deep breath and turned her attention back to Maxwell, who had noticed her standing alone. He walked over to her, a soft smile on his face. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, but Amy could see the concern in his eyes. She nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed her own words. "Yeah, just a little lost in thought," she replied, offering him a smile. "It's a lot to take in." Maxwell's smile softened, and he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I get it," he said quietly. "If you need some time, we can head out whenever you want." Amy looked up at him, her heart heavy. She didn't want to drag him into her mess, but at the same time, he deserved to know the truth. "Maxwell," she started, her voice hesitant. "I need to be honest with you. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want." Maxwell's expression didn't change. He just nodded, understanding more than she had expected. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You don't need to have everything figured out right now. I'm not going anywhere." The words should have been comforting, but they only added to the weight on her chest. Amy's heart pounded as she realized just how much she had been holding back. She had been trying so hard to convince herself that she could move on, that she could have a future with Maxwell, but now, in the quiet of the moment, she wasn't sure she could leave the past behind. The music from the party played on in the background, a reminder that life kept moving, whether she was ready or not. And as much as she wanted to believe that she could just step forward and embrace the future, part of her was still standing in the past, holding on to memories of a life that was slipping away. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Maxwell's eyes softened, and he stepped closer, his hand still on her shoulder. "Amy, you're not going to hurt me by being honest with yourself. You just need to figure out what's best for you." She nodded, swallowing hard. For the first time that night, she felt like she could breathe, even if just a little. But it was clear now. She wasn't ready to make any decisions. Not yet. She needed more time, and maybe that was the most honest thing she could admit. As Maxwell stayed by her side, offering her the space to process, Amy knew that whatever came next, she had to face it on her own terms. And for now, that meant standing still, taking a breath, and trying to figure out what the next step would be. Ivy had returned to the group, leaving Amy alone once again with her thoughts. The weight of her indecision felt unbearable, like a storm cloud hanging over her. She had never been one to shy away from making decisions, but this was different. She wasn't just choosing between two men, she was choosing between two versions of herself. The woman she had been with Ethan, and the woman she could become with Maxwell. Each version seemed to pull her in opposite directions, and no matter how hard she tried to focus on the present, the past kept creeping in. Amy took another deep breath and turned back toward Maxwell, who was still standing by the balcony, his figure a little more distant than before. He had given her space, and she appreciated that. But now, more than ever, she needed to talk to him. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face the truth, but she knew she couldn't keep running from it. She made her way toward him, her heart racing with every step. As she reached him, Maxwell turned, sensing her presence. "Amy," he said, his voice soft. "You okay?" His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, she felt like he could see straight through her, into the turmoil she had been hiding. She took a moment before responding, trying to find the right words. "I'm not okay," she said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Maxwell's face softened, and he took a small step toward her. "Talk to me, Amy. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together." His sincerity hit her like a wave, and for the first time all evening, she felt like she wasn't alone in this. She had been holding on to so much, old memories, unresolved feelings, and a future she wasn't sure she was ready to embrace. She couldn't keep hiding from it. "I don't know what I want anymore," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was over Ethan, that I had moved on, but now, I don't know. I feel like I'm stuck between two worlds." Maxwell didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there, giving her the space to let it out. His silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was reassuring. He wasn't rushing her to make a decision. "Amy," he finally said, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. You don't have to make a choice tonight." She shook her head, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. "But I feel like I'm leading you on, Maxwell. You deserve someone who knows what they want. Someone who can give you their heart fully. And right now, I can't do that." He reached out, taking her hand in his. "Amy, I'm not asking for you to have it all figured out," he said, his eyes meeting hers with a steadiness that grounded her. "I'm asking you to be honest with me. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But don't shut me out. Don't shut us out before you've really had a chance to figure it out." Amy's chest tightened as she processed his words. She had been so caught up in her fear of making the wrong choice that she hadn't stopped to think about the one thing that mattered most, what she wanted. And the truth was, she wasn't sure. But she knew she couldn't make this decision without fully understanding her own feelings. She looked down at their hands, feeling the warmth of his touch. He wasn't asking for answers right now, and for that, she was grateful. But the pressure still lingered, a silent reminder that time was moving forward whether she was ready or not. "I just need time," she said finally, her voice steady. "I need time to figure this out. I don't know how long it will take, but I promise I won't keep you hanging." Maxwell squeezed her hand, his expression soft but resolute. "Take all the time you need, Amy," he said. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in what felt like forever, Amy felt a small weight lift off her shoulders. The decision wasn't made, but the pressure to make it right away had eased. And that, at least, was a start. As they stood there, side by side, Amy couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would she find a way to move forward with Maxwell? Or would the pull of the past, of Ethan, prove to be too strong? Only time would tell, but for now, she had made the first step. She had stopped running from the truth. Ivy had noticed Amy's quiet departure from the balcony, but she didn't approach right away. Amy needed her space, and Ivy respected that. Instead, she observed from a distance, her eyes scanning the room. She saw Maxwell, surrounded by clients and colleagues, effortlessly commanding the space as always. And then there was Ethan, standing across the room, as if he had become part of the background, a figure that didn't quite belong but couldn't be ignored. Amy knew she couldn't stay in this limbo forever. Something had to give. As the evening wore on, the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of conversation felt distant to her. Her mind was still with the words Maxwell had said earlier. He had given her time, but she couldn't help but feel like she was running out of it. The uncertainty about her feelings for Ethan had lingered long enough. Was it fair to keep Maxwell in this emotional purgatory, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't? She needed to know if there was still something between her and Ethan or if she was merely clinging to an old, comfortable story. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was time to have the conversation. As if the decision was already made, Amy turned back toward Ethan, her gaze locking on him. She could see him now more clearly, standing near the edge of the crowd, leaning against the wall. He was talking to someone, but his eyes were scanning the room, and when they met hers, the intensity of the moment took her by surprise. She felt the pull again, the familiar warmth, the old connection. For a moment, it was like no time had passed at all. She could still see the boy she once loved, the man she thought she knew better than anyone. But was it the man she needed? Could she really go back? She started to walk toward him, but as she approached, she hesitated. There was so much she needed to say, but so much she was afraid to hear. Before she could take another step, she felt a presence behind her. "Maxwell, are you sure about this?" he asked softly, his voice steady but filled with concern. Amy stopped and turned to face him. He was standing a little closer than she had expected, his expression unreadable but thoughtful. "Maxwell, she began, but her voice faltered. "I have to know, Maxwell. I can't keep pretending. I need to know if there's something still there with Ethan. I don't want to drag you through this." Maxwell's expression softened, and for a moment, she saw the man she had grown to admire. He stepped closer, putting a hand on her arm. "Amy," he said gently, "you don't have to explain yourself to me. I can't ask you to just forget the past. But I need you to be honest. About what you want. About what's in your heart." Amy's chest tightened at his words. He wasn't angry, but she could hear the disappointment in his voice. She wasn't sure if it was about her confusion or the realization that he might not be the man she was meant to be with. She nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words feeling like a weight on her chest. "I don't want to hurt you, but I don't know if I'm ready to make a choice." Maxwell exhaled deeply, his eyes softening. "I'm not asking you to make a choice right now. I'm just asking you to be honest with me about your feelings." Amy nodded again, trying to steady herself. She needed time to think, to clear her mind. This wasn't something she could figure out in the heat of the moment. She turned back toward Ethan, who had been watching their interaction. He stood motionless, waiting, but she could tell that he wasn't in any rush to speak. Maxwell must have sensed the shift in her attention. "Go ahead," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "If you need to talk to him, do it. Just know I'm here when you're ready to figure this out." Amy took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. There it was, the moment she had been avoiding. She walked toward Ethan, each step feeling heavier than the last. As she reached him, their eyes met again, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the party faded into the background, and for a fleeting second, everything else felt distant. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Ivy was still watching from across the room, her eyes flicking between Amy and Ethan as they stood facing each other. The tension was palpable, and Amy could feel it too, the way her heart beat faster as she took in the familiar face of her past. Ethan was waiting for her to speak, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those deep, familiar eyes, were soft, expectant. For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the entire room. Amy took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She wasn't sure where to begin. There were so many things she needed to say, but she couldn't find the words. "Ethan," she started, her voice unsteady. "I never thought I'd be standing here, talking to you like this." Ethan didn't speak at first, but his gaze never left hers. He was waiting for her to say what she needed to say. "I thought I had moved on," Amy continued, her voice trembling slightly, "that I was done with the past. But now, I'm not so sure." Ethan took a step closer to her, his expression softening. "Amy, I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted things to end the way they did." His words hit her like a wave. washing over her in a rush of old memories. She could hear his voice in her head, the way he used to talk to her, the way they used to laugh together. It was all so familiar, so easy. But things weren't that simple anymore. I know, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you didn't. But I think I was scared. Scared of what we were becoming, scared of what I might lose if I stayed. So I left. Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening. I've never stopped thinking about you, Amy. Not for a single day. She swallowed hard, her chest tightening. This was exactly what she had been afraid of, the lingering feelings, the idea that maybe she hadn't truly let go of him. But standing here with him now, she wasn't sure if she could ever fully move on. Ethan, I don't know what I want anymore, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. I thought I was moving forward with Maxwell, but the truth is, I'm still stuck in the past. I'm still thinking about you, and I don't know how to let that go. Ethan took another step toward her, his voice soft but intense. Amy, I'm not asking for you to make a decision right now. I just need you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. If you need time to figure it out, take it. But I'm not giving up on us. His words hit her hard, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she should feel comforted or scared. He was offering her the same thing he always had, the promise of something that felt safe, something that felt like home. But that wasn't enough anymore. She couldn't just go back to the way things were. I don't know if we can go back, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Things have changed. I've changed. Ethan stepped closer, his hand almost reaching out to her, but he stopped himself. I know, he said softly, and I'm willing to accept that. All I'm asking for is a chance to show you that I can be the person you need. I'm not asking you to make a choice right now, but I want you to know that I'm here. Always. Amy's heart was in her throat, and she felt like she was drowning in the weight of his words. Everything inside her screamed to reach out, to take his hand, to fall back into the comfort of what they once had. But she couldn't. Not anymore. Not like this. I can't do this, Ethan, she said, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. I can't keep living in the past. I need to figure out what I really want, who I really want. Ethan's face fell, but he didn't pull away. I understand, he said quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. But just know that I'm here, Amy. No matter what you decide. Amy closed her eyes for a moment, taking in his words. She didn't know what the future held, and she didn't know if she was ready to make a choice. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had finally taken a step toward understanding what she needed. She wasn't ready to go back, but she wasn't sure she was ready to move forward either. All she knew was that she couldn't keep pretending. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.